smart worker knows that look, something of this has been done somewhere else. Let me get that learning. So I don't need to reinvent the entire wheel all over again. I can actually get things done from others. And this is where my networking will help a lot. This is where my influencing ability will help a lot. Suppose he is not working with me, he's in a totally different department. But he has a skill which can help me in this project. I do not know him, I know his boss. Can I influence his boss and then influence him saying, I need your help? Just spend 2 hours, help me with this. That's where influencing is written, that's where working smarter. So when you say working smarter, it's not beating the system. It's not hoodwinking. It is actually using a lot of other capabilities to ensure that you achieve your goal.
You must be a hard worker before being a smart worker.
It's a chicken or egg situation. It doesn't mean that the smart worker is not a hard worker. The smart worker is also working very hard on a number of things. Like for example, networking. Ensuring that his or her influencing ability. Because if I am going to influence him and say that you need to help me out, don't forget there will come a time when he will request help from me and I must be willing to help out there. So a lot of other things, the smart worker also works very hard. But probably in a very different way. It's like saying, you have that thela wala who pushes the push cart. He works very hard during the day. Now, with technology, he can push the same amount of workload, okay, at a much faster pace and much less effort. That's probably working smart in a very crude form. But he also will be working very hard because he may be making about 25 trips in a day, whereas this gentleman could make only 1 or 2 trips in a day. If you are thinking that in this day and age you can get by not working hard, you're mistaken. I know that's not what you're thinking, but this is just an aside that the days are gone when you could say that I don't need to work that hard. If you don't work that hard, sure, no one's going to force you, but the world will leave you behind. That's a choice that you have to make.
Just before a moment, you were talking about ambiguity in SaaS. That has been a big problem for me during my past. Can you explain me that how to deal with that kind of situation? You should ask me to be more time with that.
Okay. Firstly, I don't know you, so I don't know how well I can answer that because unless I know you, I can't tell you that. But I can tell you a few pointers. See, let's understand why is ambiguity so difficult. Because you're suddenly taken out of your comfort zone. You're getting into an area where you don't know what's going to happen. So therefore you're uncomfortable because you are not in control. When you're not in control, you find it very difficult. You need to work to an end result. It may be worthwhile at that point in time trying to establish a lot more of clarity about that ambiguous situation. Also saying that, okay, fine, if this is a situation, what can be my end goal? And actually creating an end vision of it. So then it helps you saying that, okay, I'm in an ambiguous state now, but I have created an end goal or a vision here saying that this is where I need to. So I actually start working and moving towards that direction. More often than not, when you start doing that, you'll find more and more people actually climbing onto your bandwagon at that point in time. I can only give you pointers because I do not know you personally to help you out on that. If I knew you personally, I could actually sit with you and tell you and explain to you and perhaps take you to that route. Could you elaborate on that?
For example, as far as mine is concerned, I've done my BTech in electronics and communication, and now I'm going for HR. So does it really matter? Because I am having that interest in going over there.
I think many of your batchmates can answer that question. Believe me, it doesn't matter. What matters is whether you are passionate about the area that you're getting into. And is that what you want to do? If that is what you want to do, it doesn't matter whether you want a B.Tech or it doesn't matter. There are people who do not have these qualifications, nor even an MBA, but who got on extremely well in these areas.
And so why people used to resist for going or doing something different from usual?
Why people?
Used to resist for those persons who are going to do something different than usual.
See, that's because if you look at the Indian mindset, we are used to working in a particular way. When I was passing out, the options were very limited. You had a CA or a medicine or engineering, and MBA was just about starting. Today the options are far more. If you go abroad, you really don't need to do an HR program or an MBA program to do well in marketing or in HR issues. You don't need to. If you have that qualification, well and good. And if you look at a lot of people in multinationals who are heading positions, they're not necessarily MBAs for heading positions. It doesn't matter. It's India which is still a little obsessed with many things. Have I answered your question?
So one more question. As we have talked about loyalty, so nowadays people should loyal to themselves is very much important. And how a person can be loyal? I mean, if you are surrounded with such a person who are not loyal to each other or the organization, how can we deal with them?
How can you deal with people who are not loyal? See, every organization will have its own thing. There's normally a code of conduct for every organization. If someone is not loyal, then how is it manifested? And that manifestation is what is important. And a code of conduct normally will tell you what is accepted norms or not accepted norms. Like you may have a different value system than the organization value system. For example, you may be working in a tobacco company, but you may be against tobacco. You may not smoke yourself. You may work in a liquor company, but you may not consume liquor at all. That doesn't mean that, just because you don't consume liquor, that you cannot do well in a liquor company. Doesn't mean that at all. What's more important is that the manifestation of that is important. Are you contributing to the success of the organization? Are you creating value? Or just because you do not accept this, that you don't drink, so therefore you are not actually contributing. That's more important.
What will the effect of FDI in the steel industry?
FDI in?
Steel industry. The negative effect of FDI in the steel industry.
How much of FDI do we really have in the steel industry? Nothing. It's only the local Indian players starting from Tata Steel who invest. Remember, steel is a very huge, it's a long gestation project, huge investment. And it builds a nation. It builds a nation. In fact, it is Indian companies which have now gone outside the country and have either bought over steel companies abroad or invested there. India is not necessarily a very easy place to do business compared to a lot of other countries. So that may be the reason why we do not have too much of an FDI in the steel sector as well. But as we speak, POSCO is planning to set up a huge steel plant in this. So it's not that it's not happening, it is happening, but it's not happening at the pace at which we want perhaps.
Sir, you have talked about the analytical abilities. Sir, often the people who are coming from the math background, they are good at that. But those who are not with the math, they resist with the doing the analysis. So what are the things we incorporate in us to do the dealing with analytical abilities?
First of all, get this idea out of your head that you need a maths background to be analytical. You don't. Anyone can be analytical. When we went to the institute, our seniors frightened us because we had 7 subjects every semester and it was relative grading. F was fail. You have 2 Fs, you're out of the institute. Okay? And there was a subject called quantitative techniques, QT. And there was a professor called Professor Dr. Gangopadhyay who would teach QT. He's still there. In a batch of 47 in the senior batch, 27 got Fs in QT1. And he would take QT2 also. So the seniors frightened us. So many of us who didn't have because I was a simple BCom graduate. So many of us who didn't have an engineering background or a maths background actually worked every day to ensure that we, and many of us who did not have any of this were the ones who topped that. So it doesn't matter if you have a maths background or not. Anyone can be an analytical. It's just a question of getting into that practice. That's all. Any other questions?
Sir, around question. Nowadays we are seeing that there is a cross-functional that many of the guys, those who have BCom background, they are working for marketing department, and those who have good knowledge about HR, they also work for finance. So how are you dealing with the cross-functional in your organization?
See, cross-functional moves has always been there. It's not that it's rampant. In any organization, they'll have cross-functional moves. It will depend on the aptitude shown by the individual. Okay, what that individual shows. Like British American Tobacco, where I worked, was one good organization where, at one point in time, I was seriously contemplating of getting into brands, into marketing. But then what happens is that you're told very clearly, you are at this level. If you want to move to marketing, you'll have to step down one level and come there. So if you're open with it, get into it. Else you stick in your own function. There's a reason for it. Why should they accept someone who does not know as much about marketing? It becomes that much more difficult as you go higher up. It's different when you are at a leadership position, because there you don't need to have the technical and the functional know-how as much. You need more for leadership bandwidth. So it does happen, but it's not necessarily very rapid. Well, if there aren't any other further questions, okay.
Sometimes we are a second year graduate, in second year. So after 2 or 3 months, I'll be in corporate. So while giving an interview, sometimes HR asks about our field experience, about our stream regarding questions, but we are not able to answer that question. And
Your dream.
like my specialization of finance. So sometimes I don't know all about the finance. I have completed my in 4 branches. So I have a basic knowledge about the finance. And after that, going to a corporate, I can gain the knowledge. But if sometimes HR asks a question which I don't know, so how to respond that question? Because that if somebody asks a question and we become silent, I become silent. So how to respond that?
Okay. See, firstly, I don't know if only HR will ask you the question. It could be the functional experts who will ask you the question. The best thing to do if you don't know is that say I don't know. Don't bullshit, then you'll get caught. Never do that. Because the moment the interviewer realizes that you do not know but you're bullshitting, what they are, it's attributed to say that you're lying. So there's no harm in saying, look, I don't know this, I have not studied this. But I have studied these things. So you can ask me anything about that.
So, but sometimes the questions are repeated differently. It's your best day, it's your first day of your life. That kind of questions that are perfect silence class. It's a problem, sir.
Best day of your life.
Yes, sir. Best day of your life.
Yeah, these are profile questions. Okay? You need to be prepared about that. There's no right and wrong answers to these. See, what is your best day need not be my best day. But here, remember what interviewers are looking for is that